episodes, yeah.
All the eyes are watching us. Okay, let's do it. All right, welcome to the Two Beers and a Podcast. Sorry,
I'm Mike Rattay.
hold on. I'm going to start that over.
Oh, sorry.
I want to call it the. It sounds funny. Okay. Welcome to Two Beers and a Podcast with Mike and Brad, two marketing guys with a love of craft beer and the stories that go with them. I'm Brad, the word guy.
I'm Mike, the video guy.
And this show is really all about the experience of beer and understanding, like, from label to the glass, from the brew house to the bar, what's it like to be drinking these beers, and what are the stories that they're telling. Each week we're going to feature two beers that we feel have a story or there's something we want to say about them. And this week we're looking at flagship beer, Sierra Nevada Pale, Sam Adams Boston Lager, inspired by a recent Brewbon article saying how Sierra Nevada is really going to double down on their pale and try to bring that back as a strong flagship. So before we get into that, Mike, you want to kind of describe some of our goals with this show?
Basically, what we're hoping to do is see what breweries are telling a good story, see how they're telling their story, and see if there's really any way for us to help them improve on their story as well, enjoying great beer.
More or less. Sounds good. Okay. We also talked about the two beers concept being, we don't want to belabor the point of kind of talking about how much we are or not liking a given beer we're drinking, especially I'm just not the guy who likes to listen to people drink beers that I may never get to try. And also, conversations are great, and a lot of podcasts that are conversation-based can be very interesting for long periods of time, but we wanted to kind of say, like, let's kind of keep it down to a reasonable length, about what it takes for us to share two beers. So with that, we ready to get into it?
Let's open those beers.
All right.
I'm thirsty.
Okay.
So we're going to start with the Sam Adams, start with the lager to cleanse the palate, if you will. Lagers are typically the lighter beers. They're fermented with lager yeast, which is fermented at a longer time at a colder temperature, while the ale yeast you can ferment at a warmer temperature, and they're a little more forgiving. Lagers, they're typically a lot more difficult to make, which is why people don't do them as much, because it takes about 4 weeks to let me give you more.
Yeah.
It takes about 4 weeks to ferment the lagers. And so with the ales, it just basically takes 2 weeks. So you can obviously pump out a lot more when stuff sitting in the fermenter costs smaller breweries money. So,
And, yeah, cheers. Let's have a sip.
smells.
Still good old Sam Adams. Do you remember when you first had a Sam Adams?
It was early in the game, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I know
too.
Fat Tire was my definite gateway beer, so I think that's what started me. And then Sam Adams I just had a little later in the game, but it's drinkable. It's very nice. It's very smooth.
Yeah.
Would you say that malty or yeasty kind of smell?
Yeah, yeastier in the smell. It's a maltier sip. All right, it's technically a Vienna lager, I think, is when they submit it, which is a little ironic, I suppose, if you think about it from a style category. It's called Boston Lager, and yet it's based on a Vienna style. So Sam Adams, I think, is, for a lot of us, just like Sierra Nevada Pale, when we kind of came up on these early beers. They're great, iconic beers, and are still very drinkable. Both breweries are seeing declines in sales of these beers. And I got to say, I'm part of the problem, I suppose, for those people in that these are not beers that I buy a lot. I will sometimes throw them into a mix and match when I'm doing just making my own 6-pack. If I see a Sierra Nevada variety pack, more than happy to pick it up with the 3 pails in there, and we'll drink it there. But I definitely understand their angst, I suppose, about losing market share there.
Right.
With something that is still for many of us like the beer that got us going on craft beer, both of these beers. And I'm happy. There have been times I've been to a bar and selection wasn't great. They had Sam Adams on tap, and I was like, happy to have that choice and drank that all night and felt pretty good about it.
Go ahead. That is one of the nice things about their distributorship, that when you go to one of those random bars, that they just have Miller and Bud, that at least you can rely on getting a Sam Adams, which is a lifesaver at those times.
Even though, and interestingly, I mean, they might still have, say, Goose now, but the Sam Adams will be there as well. So for me, let's talk about the experience of Sam Adams as a brand. They recently redid these bottles and the boxes for the Boston Lager in particular. By and large, people seem to be design people and brand people seem to like it. I know, like, sort of my personal take. I'm not as visual as you are in terms of my background. So I'll throw out a couple of things that I see, and then you can kind of bring in the expert opinion so I don't have to follow that. I do think it's a more simplified and bolder design, which probably works in its favor. I did see somebody suggest that the blue label kind of gets lost a little bit on the brown bottle compared to the powerful contrasts that are going on with the white and blue on the box, and I think I see that for sure. I'd like the statue, the etching, has a more mature feel maybe,
Right.
Whereas the old cartoon did have a sense of being a small guy. But that's actually one thing I wonder about with the new packaging, is that they definitely don't look like a small guy anymore, and certainly among American breweries, among craft breweries, I should say, they are not small guys. However, they are still fiercely independent, and they want to kind of, with some of their brands, play in the small guy space, and they want to play in that sort of craft independent space. And so I don't know if this is saying we're a small independent craft brewery as much, even with here it is on the neck.
Yeah.
The independent seal. So that's where I think it is a nicer look, but it basically makes them look like they're entering a larger space, being a big national brand, and maybe that's going to work for the audience they're going for here. But I'm not sure it's going to work for their sort of core original craft audience.
Right. I think you're right, and I think this also, it helps with the stoicness of Mr. Adams on the actual label, just kind of reinstating their presence of just some guy, that's, hey, we're here. And I think that's what I kind of get from the packaging.
Yeah.
Being a big bulk shopper, warehouse store shopper, I think they're doing a really good job with trying to cater to that by offering 3 to 4 different IPAs just in their cases, because I think that's smart, because they're actually paying attention to the trends in the market and what everyone wants to drink. So instead of ignoring it and trying to just say, we'll drink our lager, they're trying to cater to those people by, I think even a couple years ago, they were doing 6 different IPA. Like, they would do the single hops, and then they would do and combine them all into the one beer kind of thing. So they're, with their branding, I think they're kind of saying that they're the big dude, but at the same time, with their actions, which really is the most important thing, is that they're paying attention to what people are drinking, and they're actually catering to them, and they're giving people what they want to drink, which I think on their part is smart. And, yes, we kind of look at them as like, oh, they're these big dudes. They have their lager, but, if you see all those handles that now have the Rebel and all their other IPAs, like they're doing a good job of updating it to what people are selling. So I think they're very smart in that regard.
Yeah, there's almost anywhere you go, there's going to be some kind of Sam Adams handle.
And lately it's been an IPA, I feel
usually Rebel is a big one. I did see some Cold Snap at a Italian restaurant or something the other day I was at, and which I thought was interesting. I think they had Boston Lager in bottles. So yeah, certainly I think the Rebel IPA was a good move on their part. I know they have a New England out now. They're an interesting brewery just in general, going beyond Boston Lager, because I think one thing that they've always had that speaks to me as a craft drinker is that sense, that appeal to tradition, right? The Boston Lager, right? Samuel Adams, American traditions, like going back to sort of like the old days when America was brewing its own beer.
Right.
And if you go to their website, certainly for Sam Adams or the Boston Lager brand, they're really hitting those notes of we took on the Titans, like we're the original craft beer. And I'm trying to think. Oh, against all odds, an American success story, right? I mean, that's like a Ben Franklin kind of thing. So really kind of playing up that angle of we are the American brewery. And that works for me like so often that I have to like remind myself that I like several of their brands, but I rarely am super into a lot of their experimental things. When they put those variety packs together, and they do a lot of them, and variety packs I like those a lot. So I always attracted to those in general to try new things. And Samuel Adams, they're kind of hit or miss for me on the variety packs. But whenever I see a new one, I'm like, oh, Sam Adams, like I should check this out. Yep. And I usually wait because one of my brothers will probably get it. So I can usually try. So I still end up trying the beers. And
just when he comes over.
Yeah, right. But that's all to say, like, I'm not the guy necessarily. I'm sort of the audience for those variety packs is working on me. That part of their marketing, that part of their story is very powerful, I think. Speaks to a lot of people, and even if a couple people like me aren't into all their beers, and I don't expect anybody to be into all of anybody's beers anyhow, so it's not about that side of things exactly right now, but I think the story is very powerful.
Yeah, and marketing wise, I think they're just showing truly that they're actually paying attention to what's happening with the consumer, and I think that is almost rule number one of marketing. Like, they are so clearly being around for, are they 20? They're 30
odd years, yeah.
So 30 years. So I mean, for a while you're the only fish in the pond, and then everyone else shows up. So they adapt. They don't just get pissed that they're no one's drinking their lager. They conform to the market. They know what people are doing, and then it works. Like, because they're trying out new stuff, which that's kind of where we're at. I mean, there's so much new beer that everyone wants to try new beer. Mm-hmm. And so I think they're doing such a good job with that. Because same with me. I got a buddy that if I don't buy it, he'll end up having it. So yeah. I can try it, and I know, so it's working on one of us. And if it's the only thing at the bar, for better or for worse, if it's at one of those bars and it's their IPA, I'm going to get it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I got the cold snap when I was at that. Yeah, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go with Sam Adams, and just because I know I don't want the other stuff.
Right. So as a marketing, it's good to just pay attention to what the heck is going on with your trends around you and actually adapting to those. And I think that is one of the smartest things you can see in such an overly crowded market. Overly crowded. I don't know, what is there, like thousands of breweries in Chicago, let alone?
Right, but I think we're up to 6,000 total, yeah.
But, they're adapting to that, and they're respectful of the new market changes, and I think that's really just how you keep your spot.
So broadly speaking, I'm right on board with you there. I'm trying to look up here a couple things that I found researching this episode, and actually one of the next ones we're looking at. I saw based on talking to people, industry experts, and some of the marketing data, and one of the things he actually predicts is VinePair article. Craft brewers predict the biggest beer trends for 2018. Nico Kromedas. This was from just interviewing different brewers around, and one of them was actually saying, like the flagships are going down, are not going to be big anymore because it's too hard for the regional and larger national breweries to get attention in consumers' minds compared to local brewers. And the small guys, well, it's going to be bad for everybody because it means that it's harder for the big guys to make a play into a new market if you don't have a flagship, if that's not as important. And secondly, for the small guys in your local market, if flagships aren't important to people, then it means you need to keep churning out new things all the time, right? Yeah, I guess I'm curious if you have a thought on what the future of Boston Lager as a flagship might be.
Hmm.
Or do you think that's going to be a problem for somebody like Boston Lager, maybe?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't think so, but obviously the tastes are moving to IPAs, so they may just keep refining their Rebel and other IPAs, and maybe they do find a new
Maybe
flagship.
that becomes yeah.
But so I think it's trying to predict consumer behavior. So I think they're doing it in the right way, where they don't know, they're not stopping that,
Right.
but they're still pushing what consumers want.
I think the advantage they have is they went national before most anybody else. I mean,
Right.
they were out there already, so it's already an established brand. It's not, you're not a new guy who's suddenly trying to grow and reach a market 100 miles out. They're already there, so I think that's going to be a bigger problem for newer guys than it will be for somebody like either of these two who have a national reputation.
On that note, I do think flagships like music are key. Like, everyone has those one or two songs that
Good,
they
yes.
like hearing at a concert. They may like hearing a lot of the new stuff, but typically they want to hear that song. So if it'll just kind of dictate what the consumer does. If they literally just lose all interest in lagers, then I think they're at least set up to kind of benefit from that, because they keep testing out new IPAs, and so they're just going to keep adjusting with that, and so maybe it just gets replaced. But since they have such a large presence, that they'll be okay.
And I keep hearing brewers say that pilsners and lagers are like the next big thing. I've been hearing that for like 2 or 3 years now, so I know people are making them. I don't see that consumers are picking up on them as much, except for now, like this new trend towards light American lagers that people are coming. Even Founders has one now, which I thought was a little maybe off-brand for them, but go for it. And so that I think is people are kind of making the jump from, okay, I get Budweiser and I get Miller, and here's like the Founders version. Here's the
Right.
whoever, and so that's interesting to me. And I wonder if there really is a movement towards lagers, if that will help sort of bring people back to a Sierra Nevada or a Sam Adams. I also wonder if there's as things kind of start to even out now with the growth in the market, for a certain segment of people, it's just going to be there's a certain amount of like homecoming maybe that goes on once in a while. And I've done this. This is part of why I've gotten these beers every once in a while, is you try new stuff all the time, and then once in a while you're like
Fatigue.
yeah, and every once in a while you
New
just
beer
want to be like,
fatigue.
hey, I remember this beer. Like, this was a good beer. I used to drink this a lot. You just pick it up, and it just feels good to drink it again. So I don't know if that's going to sustain them by itself, but I
Right.
think there is some of that among drinkers that is worth appealing to, and I think it's good that then both of these we'll talk about in a minute with Sierra Nevada are appealing to their tradition and to their history, as well as looking forward.
Right. Yeah, final notes on that then. I agree. And I think brand is huge. And I think those people that have grown up, like, you will go back to that. And if they stop making that, you will probably try their IPA or whatever they're pitching as their new flagship. And so I think that's kind of showcasing good branding on, like, they're a reliable beer, they're a reliable company. So you like them. You just want it's cool going back to them, and they deliver. So
Good deal.
any
All right.
last thoughts on the lager?
I think no, I think I liked your point, just going back to the idea of the brand and having something that is like the one thing that's associated with your brand. I think is a big deal too. Just because you got to be good at something, you got to be known for something. I think there's too many people out there to just be another brewery making a bunch of different things. You, of course, need to be making a bunch of different things because that's just what the consumer seems to want. But there has to be that kind of. It needs to be out there on the shelf where they can look and say, "Oh yeah, that's the one," or where the store clerk can be like, "Here, this brewery does a lot of stuff, but if you don't know Sierra Nevada yet, grab the pail and start there."
Agreed.
Yeah.
They're real briefly, I meant to bring this up. Their Instagram, I think they're doing a really good job. They're not posting daily, But that's kind of. I mean, they got like 50,000 followers or 87,000 followers. So I mean, people are aware of them. People are interested in them, and all the stuff that they're showing is, I mean, it's good. So they understand that there's a lot of attention in Instagram, and so they're showcasing a lot of their new beers. They're not, which I think is also key, because they're not just focusing on the lager. They're showing, hey, we got all this other stuff, and it speaks to your product or your comment of actually having new products, and then they're just getting it out to people. So it's I think that's a good idea.
Good.
So now we're going to jump over to Sierra Nevada, another long-term.
This has been around since 1980,
Cheers.
it says. Let's do it.
First point, 288,000 followers on their
Wow.
Instagram. So I think at that point you can kind
Interesting.
of get an idea what people think of them just on numbers on that. And actually there's a lot of green on this. So basically what they're pitching is the pale.
Oh, yeah. See
So
it moving. It's definitely becoming a big thing. And again, it's a beer I drink and I'm like, good, yeah, this is a good beer. I like this. Right? Like it's
solid.
It's not one of these wild and crazy beers that's talking about some food that's in there that's in addition to the regular recipe or any special aging or any special process, although it is made with whole clone hops, which I think they're starting to talk about a little bit more, which is unusual. I think they're one of the few breweries probably in the country doing that. So I think I forgot where I was going with that.
They're doing a good job. So yeah, so what kind of started us on some of this is that Brad saw an article kind of talking about their flagship as well, and so how they're getting back to starting to retell the story of what makes them special, because if you're looking for an aggressive IPA, this isn't the place to go, but if you're looking for a chill pale, this is a perfect place to go. And that is I think they're kind of trying to remind everybody, because people and that's the thing about marketing, you think it doesn't work when it's always there, and then you stop doing it, and then everyone's gone, and it's like, oh wait, people forgot about us. It's like, well, you didn't remind us all the time. So since they're one of those good beers that I feel like there's a lot of neon sign or a lot of poster placement in general in bars, so I think they do pretty good with keeping the name there. I know, similar to Sam Adams, if I go to one of those dive bars where they typically just have Bud or Miller, the first thing I look for is my Sierra, and then I'll look for a Sam. So I instinctively I know that that's just a delicious beer. Cascade hops, which is that citrus flavor that we've all basically come to know and love. However, Citra hops have recently replaced Cascade as I think the hop that everyone uses.
Yeah.
But it's still a phenomenal taste if you like the citrus.
Great. And I think they've already, since that article, that was a Brewbound article from
like 3 weeks ago.
Not too long ago, but they've already started, making a play for like Mike was saying, really featuring it on their Instagram and really making it more about the pale. And I like kind of what they're doing on their website already. With when you go to the pale ale, it's they got a slider for it at the top, and then when you click on it, it says the beginning, a classic, our most popular beer. And it's nice. They're hitting a lot of notes there. So they're telling a little story. Homebrewer's dream grew into an icon. So it's that sense of we have the tradition, we have a story, we've been around, and it's the same story as most breweries. Started as homebrewers, turned it into something, and in this case, they're calling it an icon, right? And as soon as you call it an icon, you got that sense of well, if I know craft beer, then I need to know the icons, right? And chances are most craft beer people do, but maybe the newer ones came into it differently. Again, this was another gateway for me. For a lot of us. But the younger kids, the millennials, who knows how they get into it. And then also calling it our most popular beer. Again, same thing, well, why is it so popular? I need to check it out.
Right.
So I think they're doing some good things already. and then they even give some simple kind of facts that you can geek out a little bit on, but not too much. There's
Right.
some food pairing, and then they give you a clone recipe, which I think is also great.
That's genius.
Which is just a good way to get your. I think it was the guy from Pipeworks was saying on Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable that they give out like at least the ingredients for anytime somebody asks, they'll just give the ingredients out of their beers, if not like the actual recipe. But they're like, if people want to make your beer, like that's a good thing. That means they want to drink your beer. So
Right.
they're going to come back and actually get your beer, even if
Yeah.
they make some of their own.
2 batches, and then they're like, how does it taste again? Then they get another 6er. I think, as Brad mentioned, it's another one of those the flagship, of course, but it is one of those like OG gateway beers that you sort of, when there was no one else, you try it, and this was the most aggressive IPA, at the time, and it's just like, the first time, I'm sure the first time you have a Cascade hop beer, you remember that citrus, and then that's the thing you're always chasing to get. What's your citrus beer? What's your citrus? At least me, I'm always after the citrus IPAs because that's my flavor. And so I think, being when there was Fat Tire and then this, it helped bring a lot of people over, and then you get Three Floyds and then et cetera. But it helps.
It blows it up, yeah.
Being first.
Right. So I think it'll be interesting to see if this does what it's supposed to, because I think, again, as we were saying, it's good to be known for something and have some single beer associated with you. I do think that they can continue to tell more of that story of being a family-owned company. I do see a picture of a guy with his kid on Instagram here. Those parts of the stories of being a traditional and family-owned company, all the stuff they've been doing with hops and their hop torpedo, geeks know that, but that's stuff that, especially as you're getting big enough, if you want to start doing TV spots or something or even just video showing like the hop torpedo, talking about it, what it does, because craft beer guys are gonna love to walk into a bar and be like, yeah, they shoot this up with hops with a hop torpedo. They don't even need to know exactly what you're doing. They just need to know it's called a hop torpedo,
right.
And they're just like, I'm sold, right? And now I know something. I have this cool term in my head. So really playing that up, I think, could be a bigger part of what they're doing here.
Yeah.
And just selling their brand. And I wonder, like, if there really ought not to be some kind of. It'd be interesting to me to have somebody like Sam Adams and Sierra and Alaskan. It was probably Anchor. Some of these like early pioneers get together and do like a campaign together that's like, come home to the
Right.
original, or
Yeah.
some kind of like just to like an appeal to guys like us who kind of get a little distracted with the new stuff once in a while, and kind of be like, hey, like, we got you into this. We're your
Right.
first love, and we're still doing the same great stuff.
Mount Beermore.
Yeah.
Just the mountaintop of the 4 of the guys just kind of, sitting there with hops kind of growing around them sort of thing. Like,
yeah, right.
like or like for their eyebrows or beards or whatever. Like it's, that'd be interesting too. Cause that's kind of what happens, the collective. And that's kind of just where you keep moving forward, where they just absolve each other, and then new segments of kind of selling everyone. Maybe they'll do sampler packs together,
Yeah.
how they'll actually work together. But
They could do Sierra Nevada's beer camp. So Sierra Nevada actually, as much as they're trying to push the Pale as the flagship, like somebody was asking me, I had a bunch of guys over for a tasting the other night, and we all have kids at the same school, so that was the theme. Like, let's try to get to know each other with beer, and
works.
And so, of course, I bought all these like specialty bottles that we wouldn't normally drink on an everyday basis. But then they were asking me like, well, what do you drink every day? Like, what's in your beer fridge right now? I thought about it. And I had it was to some extent, surprisingly, I don't want to say conventional, but I had, because it was St. Patrick's Day recently, I had the Guinness 200th anniversary pack. I had 4 different styles of Guinness in there. I had a Sierra Nevada IPA pack. and I had some other Sierra Nevada, I can't remember now, or double hop bullet, or whatever what they just came out with.
Right.
A New Belgium had a variety pack, the blending it pack, blended like a brewer, which is a really fun pack. I was like, shoot, like because those guys have been getting me with these variety packs where I can just have a few, just a couple.
They work.
But these are all like some of the guys were the first guys I was drinking, and I'm still drinking them when it comes down to it. I'm not drinking Fat Tire, I'm not drinking Pale as much, but they're still in my fridge.
So the brand. We do go back. We do come home with a lot of stuff, especially music, movies. Those are the people that kind of stick with us, and beer. It is kind of the same. And I think you kind of basically touching on that, I believe that, I don't know, craft beer is interesting because I do feel like a lot of these people where they can win, and what as a consumer I just hope to see is that they're just going to start now competing a little more on price, drop the craft shenanigans after some company was bought for $1 billion, drop your craft shenanigans and at least be a little more considerate with your pricing to help the local person out. And I don't know, that'll be interesting. But I think that's where they could win.
So so I think I think we're basically saying both of these are doing a pretty decent job, especially the new push with the Pale, of really kind of saying like here's something that's important to us, something that is central to who we are. I go back and forth with visuals, and we'll probably talk about this in our next episode. I know we're going to look at 2 visually diverse breweries in Chicagoland here. But when the Sierra Nevada labels, if you ever see like a through the years,
oh yeah, they're the same.
They're more or less the same. They're like these minor tweaks. They've gotten a little more updated for just to look a little more modern, say, but basically still a very traditional look. I don't think I would want them to go too far in any other direction.
I'm just thinking like I really like it, and I hope they don't change that because I do love the.
But I don't think they want to become they don't want to become like Dad's beer either, right? They need to stay fresh. And of course, some of their newer brands like the Hop Bullet departs from the standard look. Some of that in the IPA pack I have, a number of them depart from that template. But it's one of those things where some of these beers, I could see the impetus to kind of update and become really modern. I think of somebody like a New Belgium, it's a fine look, but to me it starts to look a little more corporate if you get too consistent and too modern looking, I guess. You compare like the sort of like the blue banner with an image, New Belgium labels, to the like their cellar blender or their sour saison. Like they have the little those nicer ones. I really like that look where they're going for a little more premium look.
I like that idea too. Like just the general, I guess humans don't like change in general, but like, that being consistent, but then actually being experimental with your experimental stuff is a great way to rebrand and not be. That's where you can be the kind of Dad's beer and be the consistent thing, but then go to being, so Dad drinks the Pale, but I'm going to drink the double IPA kind of thing, or the barrel aged.
Well, but that's I think where they don't want to become the Dad's beer, and they put this in cans now. We got bottles of both of these, but I think they're canning both of these, which I think is partly an attempt to reach younger audiences.
I think so too.
Which is probably a good way to go. I think cans have certainly arrived.
Yes.
Nobody's really flinching at cans anymore. So there's no real risk, I think, in going into cans. I think you don't want to become like a Dad's beer, and you want to kind of create a sense, even if you go like come home to Pale, Sierra Pale, come home to Anchor Steam, Even if you wanted to do something like that with those, with these sort of foundational heritage craft breweries, you want to do it in a way that's like, this is the beer you bring to, it could be the beer you bring to Thanksgiving, could be the beer you bring to party where like you just know
Right.
there's going to be a mixed crowd of people. You don't, like, somebody else is bringing the bud, and you're the guy bringing, like, what am I going to bring that's going to be a palate pleaser, and maybe it'll turn some people on to craft. That might be an angle to go, just like, this is the great beer to introduce your friends to
Right.
craft. And so you can know, it's for people who know something about craft. These are the icons. This is part of your craft education. You could kind of segment it a little bit, you know, how to get into craft, but then also you want to have credentials as a craft drinker. You have to know these beers,
Right.
because these are iconic beers, right? So there's a couple ways you could probably play with that, or targeting different people at the same time.
Right. And I think, you know, and that's where, just on the party thing, that's where a lot of these places or these beers will win on pricing, because if you can get a cheap case or a cheaper case of your pale ale, your Sierra Nevada or whatever, you'll probably bring that opposed to your $12 6-pack
Right.
beer, you know,
Yeah.
like, and then get a case of those and you'd be like, well, I don't know, you're probably not going to like it. Maybe don't drink that.
Right. Nobody's buying 4 packs of Dogfish Head for
Right.
their party. Yeah.
Yeah. So, last thoughts on, I mean, I think they're both doing a good job. I see Sierra is coming back to repitch this pale, so I think we might be able to, I guess we're helping them out. But you expect them to probably be pushing that a lot more. It'd be interesting. I mean, they're doing their social right with almost 300,000 followers. So, I mean, people are paying attention to them. So now, as with anything, you're reminding people that they have this. So when you go to the store and you see it for $9 or whatever it is, that people want to buy it over the $13 special 6-pack probably. So
Right. Yeah, and I think it's, you know, the thing is, if you can't get rid of these either.
right,
Like when it comes down to, you can't stop making Sierra Pale because
it's really good.
well, it's really good, but people, I think that will send like these weird ripples. Like even if you don't, when I went to the store to get it today, like I just assumed it'd be in the fridge. Like I didn't even think about it. There was a moment I was like, wait, where's the Sierra Nevada? And then I finally found it. And it was like a brief moment of like, what if it's not in the fridge? Like it meant my world would be thrown upside down. Like it would not make sense in my world that they didn't have it in the fridge. So to some extent, you have to keep making it anyhow. But
That's how you know the bottom's falling out.
But I think it's not like it's a burden, because it's a product you can get behind. It's a product that has a story, and that's good. That's something you can share with people that's worth pushing. So I wish them all the best.
Yeah. So 2 cheers to Sam Adams and Sierra. I think you guys are doing a good job at your branding, your iconic storytelling. And yeah, keep pushing.
Right.
Sam Adams, keep inventing. That's really key.
Nice.
Cool. That wraps up this episode. You've been listening to 2 Beers on a Podcast with Brad and Mike.
If you like what you've heard, give us a rating on iTunes. And if you have an idea for a topic or pairing, drop us a line at Twitter. We're at 2BeersPod. And if you're interested in working with us, you can also talk to us through Twitter or at the link below.
Thank you.
Thanks. Like I nearly bought. I think 2beersinapodcast.com is available. Are we ready to go in for that?